So this is where we come to the AU, which is the elemental unit of FACS. AU is an acronym for action unit. And I say the magnificent AU because the AU really has so much power. It is what drives the facial action coding system, and it is the idea of having these elemental building blocks for behavior that has been very appealing to people in a number of fields. So I want to reinforce that AU is an elemental unit of behavior. It corresponds to underlying muscular action, but an AU is not a muscle. An AU is how a muscle appears on the outside when you look at the face. So when I contract frontalis, frontalis is a big muscle in the brow. It's a big set of fibers right here. When I contract all of frontalis, I lift up my brows. And there are two action units involved in lifting up the brows. I will explain that shortly. But just to go back to some of the material I have here, every AU is designated by a number, and there are over 45 action units or AUs in FACS, and each AU is scored on a 5-point intensity scale to indicate how strongly it has acted. Is it a very tiny movement or it is a big movement? So AU is not a muscle, but it reflects the action of underlying muscles. So let's just take a look at the human face, which is really remarkable. The face is unlike any other part of the human body. In that, in most areas of the human body, muscles are there to help us move around. You know, they move bones around, help us walk, help us stand, help us do things with our hands. In the face, there are only a couple muscles that are involved in moving bone, the ones that open and close the jaw. And we see in my figure here, masseter is one of those. But most of the other muscles in the face are not for moving bone. They actually just move the features around. Some are involved in speaking and eating, but really one conclusion that we can draw is that a lot of the function of them might be communicative. But I'll set that aside. I just want you to get a sense of all these different facial muscles. This is not every facial muscle, but a lot of them. And if you'll see in red here, I have shared, let me see what happens when I go into slideshow mode. It might be a little better. Let's try this. It might be a little bigger. Okay. So you can see that in red, I have the number of an AU that corresponds to the action of the muscle I'm pointing to. So if we look, for example, at zygomaticus major, this long set of fibers that originates high on the cheekbone on the zygomatic arch and attaches near the lip corner. When it contracts, contracts, and when we say contract, that's shortening, right? When muscles contract, they shorten, and they always move towards their origins. So when zygomatic contracts, it moves this way, and what that does is it pulls the lip corners up obliquely in what we typically think of as a smile. It lifts the cheeks in the process, making them more prominent, lifting them up. There's a number of things that happen to the face. The changes in the face that we see when zygomaticus major contracts are known as action unit 12. So that gives you a sense of how the action units correspond to the underlying musculature. So there's close to a 1-to-1 ratio between the action units and the underlying muscles, but it's not a perfect 1-to-1 relationship. In some cases, we have one set of muscles that does more than one action. In other cases, we have one action that involves more than one set of muscles. So let's start with the example of occipitofrontalis. We sometimes just call it frontalis. This is a large set of fibers in the brow that originates along the scalp line and attaches near the eyebrows. When frontalis contracts, the movement is upward. However, we can describe facial actions that correspond to different regions of frontalis. When the inner part of frontalis lifts up, that's action unit 1, raising the inner corners of the eyebrows. When the outer or more lateral portion, so over here, these fibers can act independently. The medial fibers and the lateral fibers. When the lateral fibers go up, it's action unit 2. And This is actually Thomas Turkildson, my collaborator on the FACS manual. And let's hope these work. I'm going to show you him doing AU1. That's AU1, where these inner fibers of frontalis have contracted. Notice we see these short, in addition to the brows going up in the center. Let's see if I can get it to do it again. They're lifted up, the brows are more oblique. The muscle here has contracted up toward the scalp, folding up the skin in its pathway, which is why we see these short horizontal wrinkles as a sign of one. When people learn these AUs, they learn all the changes in appearance on the face that correspond to that action. The changes in appearance come from the deformations of the tissue that are in the pathway of the set of fibers. There's a long lever here. This folds up. So that's what happens with AU1. With AU2, the outer corners of the brow are lifted, or the lateral strands of occipital frontalis. And we see, oops, I'm going to do that again because I want to pause it. And we see here, we get short horizontal wrinkles out here on the lateral portion of the brow. And that corresponds to these fibers contracting. Often we get the combination of 1 plus 2, where both actions occur and both the medial and lateral portion of frontalis are lifted. And when we get this, I better show again because I want to pause it on there. You see that the lines go further across the brow because we get contraction of the whole set of fibers. So that's an example where we have one set of fibers that does more than one thing. Let's see if I can move ahead here. It just wants to replay that. So I'm going to go here to this slide, which is I want to show you the difference. So with 4, and this is a picture, these are pictures from the original FACS manual that are in the 2002 manual that are actually, they're old, but they're really wonderful images. I'm showing you this because it breaks down how, in contrast to frontalis, where we have one muscle that does 2 different things, right? We have one inner corners, 2 outer corners of the brow. With 4, we have one action that involves 3 different muscles. And we can see that here. So action unit 4, and I'm just going to go off the share a second to demonstrate on my face, and then I'll come back. With action unit 4, the brows come down and together. So you'll see that my brows are being lowered and they're being pulled together, which is evidenced by the deepening of these furrows here, the fact that they're moving closer together, and the downward action should be pretty obvious. They're moving further down close to my eyes. So back to the screen share to show you something about the muscles. When you look at these, you'll see these are muscle fibers for AU4, that's AU4. And to show you how these diagrams work, these are to indicate the direction of movement. This is in the existing manual that was published in 2002. And you'll see that they have the AU number inside a circle here. That means that's where there's the origin of the muscle, and movement is always toward the origin. So these muscles move toward this way, and this way. There are 3 AUs involved in AU, 3 muscles involved in AU4. Corrugator, supercilii, which brings the brows together, creating the fold between the brows, and 2 sets of muscles here that are primarily involved in bringing the brows down. The main one is procerus, which is indicated here. There's also depressor supercilii, and depressor supercilii can get recruited in the together or the down part of AU4. So I show you these diagrams just to give you a sense of how the AU to muscle relationship is not always 1-to-1.